Everybody to the World Affairs Council of Atlanta. I'm Amanda Mattingly, and I'm chair of the Members Forum Steering Committee. And today is our December Members Forum, and our guest speaker is the one and only Ambassador Charles Shapiro. We're just really privileged and honored to have you here today and to have had you at the World Affairs Council of Atlanta for the last 7 years. So it's of course bittersweet today because it is the last event of the year of 2021 and your last event as president of the World Affairs Council. So we're glad that you're here today. And it's a good opportunity for all of us to say thank you to Charles for everything you've done for the council and for us. After your long and decorated career as an American diplomat working at the U.S. Department of State, including as U.S. Ambassador to Venezuela, and then leading the Institute of the Americas at the University of California, San Diego, you decided to come home to Atlanta, and we are so grateful. And you've just been a transformative leader for the World Affairs Council. You've contributed so much, not just to the council, but to Georgia State. And we've all benefited greatly from your insight and wisdom, creativity, imagination, experience. So everything from leading trips to Cuba to mentoring the young leaders and to the just dozens of fantastic programs that many of you were all just now talking about. It's been really a great last 7 years. We're happy that we have former presidents on the call today, too, of the World Affairs Council. We've got Wayne Lord and Cedric Sussman, so thank you all for joining as well. This is going to be a good chance today to say thank you and also to ask you some questions, Charles.
I thought I asked the questions. I don't answer them.
You get to ask all the questions, but today we're going to ask you the questions. So we're going to talk about the state of the world today and how you see the geopolitical landscape changing, how you see Atlanta changing, and we hope you can put it into some larger context for us. So thank you and welcome. Welcome everybody. We're so glad you're here. I'm going to ask a couple questions and then you know the deal. We'll open it up to you all to ask questions. You'll be able to use the Zoom function at the bottom to raise your hand. And I will then be able to call on you. You can unmute yourselves and your camera. You can put on and ask Charles directly. So thank you again. So I'm going to just start by asking you, Charles, just a very basic question. Where are we in the world today? What is the state of affairs? And how have you seen the geopolitical landscape shift in the 7 years since you've been president? And as you answer that question, thinking about U.S. foreign policy, national security, international business relations, I wonder if you could also talk about some of the programs that you think were most revelatory or predicting of those changes.
Oh, wow. That was a great question. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you everyone in the audience. As I'm seeing people log on, and I'm seeing loads and loads of old friends who've been big supporters. And I got to start by thanking you and your colleagues. We have for those of you who aren't members of World Affairs Council, there's a members forum and a members forum steering committee, which Amanda is the chair of, which plans programs once a month, and give us advice generally about what people are looking for and what you want to do. And I really appreciate that. And that's been great fun. It's been fun working with y'all, and I've enjoyed that thoroughly. Okay, so now break. Let's talk about the world a little bit. I mean, what's changed, and I think what's hard for the United States is, we're at the 30th anniversary of the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? So if you're over, a certain age, so we're 30 years old, I mean, we're so used to the US being the only superpower in the world. And for 3 decades. And that has just sort of become second nature to us. And for us, there's not another superpower, but we certainly do have a strategic rival now, and that's China, which soon will be a superpower. And so that's been a huge change for us. And it's not that the US is weaker or that our economy has declined. It's that as a percentage of the world's economy, we are declining. And our military, which was so dominant for so long, and our diplomats, we have again, the way we had during the Cold War with the Soviet Union, we've got other people we need to worry about and other concerns. Add to that, I mean, I guarantee you that certainly when I started at State Department, and I bet you when you were working at State Department, Amanda, that nobody talked about climate change and nobody talked about pandemics.
Nope.
I mean, it's just like, what? And so, all those courses you took in graduate school, it's like, did you ever take a course about pandemics and how it would change the course of the world? Of course not.
No.
There were people talking about it. We just didn't pay attention to it.
Well, it certainly wasn't woven into how we thought about U.S. foreign policy or national security.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, there's a learning curve associated with that. And, you look at our own country where we just had these, horrible tornadoes twice now, almost consecutive days in the Midwest and in Kentucky. That, of course, you can't prove a particular weather event is associated with climate change, but it certainly seems that way. It seems that these weather events are getting worse, and that you've never had tornadoes in the winter before. Now we're having tornadoes in the winter. Horrible forest fires on the West Coast. So, and in Australia, I mean, it's sort of interesting that the reason that there was a shortage of N95 masks 2 years ago was because everybody sent all their masks to Australia, where people needed them because the smoke was so bad. It's like, what?
Right.
And then that interconnectivity of something as simple as N95 masks is something that most Americans, and I bet you most people around the world, rarely think about. And that's a hard adjustment for all of us to make. And particularly, and I'm going to say in the United States with 336 million people in this gigantic economy and this a country that's the size of a continent, where you can live your life really, really well and never leave the US. Maybe go on to Cancun on vacation. If you get real adventurous, go to London, right? And that's I think it's hard for us, and it's harder because our country's so big. If you were in a small European or African country, you're very much aware of how important the outside world is. But for us, it's a hard concept to internalize.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, in terms when you talk about the mass, I'm remembering actually one of the first. Was it a first Zoom program that you had where we talked about the shortages of masks and PPE? And I thought that was really an interesting program that reminded me of they knew about the mask shortage at the end of December. I remember them saying.
Yeah. But
of December of what, 2019?
Yeah. So one of my our board members, Jim Reed, said they were collecting masks and sending them to China, because he works for a company that has plants in China. And so they were sending masks to China in December and January, right? Like as if this would never be a problem for us.
Right. Well, the interconnectedness I think that having gone through the pandemic, that is something that we are all much more well aware of. And perhaps that gives hope that more people will be studying these interconnected issues, whether it's climate change and foreign policy or pandemics and national security. That's my hope. Let me ask you about Atlanta more specifically. How do you think Atlanta has changed since you came in as president in 2014 and moved back here? How is Atlanta different? I'm thinking about how is it, do you see Atlanta as more or less vulnerable to things like a pandemic or cyber attacks or what else? Assaults on democracy. Are we more or less open to international business, accepting refugees, sports diplomacy, all of which, by the way, you've had programs on
Yes.
under your watch. I'm wondering if you could help us put Atlanta into the larger national and global context.
Obviously politics in Georgia are different from politics in Oregon. Derek Olson's on from Oregon, and different from, you name it around the country. But I think the US has some stuff in common that, Atlanta has, is that if you're not in Washington or New York or maybe LA, I mean, we're this big city. I mean, think about it, 6 million people in metro Atlanta, 6 million people with a gigantic international airport and a huge port in, I consider, if you talk about Atlanta in an economic sense, I mean, Savannah is our port city, right? And yet we're very provincial. And I think that's, we're not unique in that regard. I think, that's the way the US is going back, because we're such a big country, is that, we expect everybody to learn English. We expect people to adapt to our way of doing things. When you see these courses online about, dealing with foreign cultures, it's as if the foreigners have the funny culture, not us, right? And so, and then, there are obviously exceptions. The Fortune 500 companies that are dealing around the world and have been for years. The ones in Atlanta and the ones elsewhere. I mean, the people in the who are employees of those companies, I mean, they understand it, but their next door neighbors don't. That was always, sort of my standard, I think, is that, you want to be able to explain an issue so your mother's next door neighbor can understand it. And that's a high bar.
Yes, that can be.
That's a high bar to meet, because we don't deal with that. And technology has made that even harder. So that, raise your hand if you have a newspaper delivered to your front door anymore.
I'm one of the very few, I realize.
Yeah, exactly. And
but you would think, Charles, that would make it easier, though. Don't we have more access to information than we did before?
Yes and no. You have access to the information you want, which is,
Wow.
You can spend all day long, looking at your sports team or your, you name it. There's TikTok for making bread, right? And you can watch bread TikTok all day long, which Laura Dawson, my partner, does, right? And she and that's great. But and I'm going to sound like the old guy I am. When I was a kid, when there were only 3 TV channels, and they differed a little bit, but the news was the same 10 items that were on the news on all 3 channels, and they might have a slightly different take on it, but it was more or less the same. And you watched it either over dinner, depending on what kind of family you were, or after dinner. Almost like a religious experience, the shared religious experience that everybody did that. And then you got the newspaper and you read the newspaper. And I'm going to apologize, but I think that, if the number of people who I have contact with who are under 40, who don't read a newspaper, who read what pops up on Instagram or Facebook or, and then if it looks interesting, they might read it, rather than, taking the New York Times or the, you name it, where, when you have that hard copy, you end up reading articles because it's next to the article you're interested in, right? And you go, oh, I didn't know that. And with online, it's just, you get in a stovepipe, where you can just,
Right.
you can stay in your own world.
Right. So is that something that keeps you up at night? That's my next question is.
Yeah, that does keep me up at night.
What keeps you up at night? What worries you in terms of
worries me
looking
is
at the state of the world?
What worries me is the United States. I mean, that's what I'm concerned about. When you're sitting in.
You mean our institutions, our body politic, the divisiveness? What
Yes,
about the United
yes,
States?
yes to all of the above. When you see these, if you go back to, people predicting, what's going to happen in 2021 or, 2010, and of course you're always wrong, because who could have predicted that, that there'd be a civil war going on in Ethiopia, that Russia would have troops on the Ukraine border, that, a year ago, the biggest news, international news, was North Korea. When's the last time you read an article about North Korea? But what I do worry about is the United States. And that's what keeps me up at night, that we have become so divided and not just divided over policy, but divided over the facts.
Right.
And that I just find absolutely troubling. And something that we all need to do something about. And our media has accelerated, and of course, it's easy to blame the media, and I apologize to anybody who's on from the media, but if you watch cable news, you think the world is binary, right? That every issue, what do you do about the Russian troops on the Ukraine border, and cut off Nord Stream 2. Well, that might be part of the solution, but it's not the only solution. I mean, it's not that there's, in your life with your children and your family, your work, there's nothing that's black and white. There's no issue where it's 100% this and 0% that. Dealing with your next door neighbors, for goodness sake. And
Right.
so why would we convince ourselves that in contrast with our daily lives, public policy, whether it's domestic policy or international policy, is binary? That there's a right and wrong answer, when of course it's complicated. The closer you get to an issue, the more granular it is, and the more you need to learn about it. And that we've got, people denying, the basic tenets of democracy in the United States undercuts our ability to talk about democracy abroad.
Right. I mean, I never would have thought of when we were writing cables back to Washington from Caracas about the breakdown of democracy and how, no one trusted the results of the election. I never would have guessed that less than 20 years later, we'd be talking about that here at home.
Well, exactly. I mean, now I might get shut down, but that we've got a candidate for governor who's just announced this past week, who the reason he's running is, he's running to the right of our incumbent governor, Brian Kemp, who is as conservative as you could possibly be. He's, and his challenger is running to the right of him. And the reason he's running to the right of him is that he shouldn't have certified the electoral results. And the electoral results were counted, and they were recounted 3 times. I just find that extraordinary. And so,
Right.
Denying that today is Friday doesn't mean there's a question about whether or not today is Friday.
So, okay, so we need to be looking out for China. We need to be protecting our own democracy at home and thinking about the interconnectedness in terms of whether it's pandemics or the next pandemic, climate change. What else? What else do you think we should be keeping an eye on in the years to come, Charles?
Well, first of all, I was thinking about this morning, is that we pay for a huge bureaucracy that in fact does worry about everything. Whether or not it's in the newspaper. I mean, there are people at Defense Department, State Department, CIA, Treasury, who are worrying about, you name the country anywhere in the world. There are assistant secretaries who are busy dealing with those issues. And there's always, well, you didn't mention this country, or what about, what's going on in this, that, or the other. So we need to be concerned about China. I mean, let me go back to that. We need to be concerned about China and Taiwan in particular. And I will say, if you have not, please go and look at the YouTube video of the program we did with David Rennie, the Economist magazine, Beijing correspondent. And it just I could feel the light turning on over my head as he was talking. And
yes, it was frightening, actually, I thought.
It was frightening, and it was 2 or 3 months old. And I watched it again this week, and it's still good. So go watch that. We need to worry about, as the US shifts our attention to East Asia in particular, it makes Germany more important, right? And Germany's role within NATO, and Germany's role as the de facto leader of the European Union way, way more important. And it's going to make this new government that was just sworn in Germany way more important. And so that's something we really need to pay attention to. We need to pay attention to our allies. I mean, as that superpower status inevitably declines, working in concert with allies becomes so much more important. Whether you're, and it doesn't matter what the issue is and where it is in the world. And I'm going to say this, and not just because Kirk Duga, the acting consul general of Canada, is on the line here, but we Americans constantly ignore the blessing that we have of having the best neighbors the world could ask for, and that any other nation would be delighted to have, and that's Mexico and Canada. And we mistreat them in Republican and Democratic administrations equally. I mean, it's not a partisan thing. Apparently it's some sort of genetic thing, is that, we mistreat the countries that are our number 1 and number 2 export markets, that are our closest and best allies, and we do it at our own peril.
Right. Is it just maybe taking for granted or mistreating?
We actually actively mistreat both of them. But not because we're being mean, but because we don't think about it. We just go ahead and do what we think is right. I mean, this latest thing with electric vehicles and U.S. policy that seems so right to the president. We want more electric vehicles, and so we're going to do it in a way. Yeah. Anyhow, that absolutely ignores Mexico and Canada, and just is almost, I don't want to say mortal wound is too strong, but terrible wound to our closest allies. And now here's this is probably number 5 or 6 on my list, so I can't remember where I am, is India. Oh my word. I mean, I hate to say it, I think the last administration paid more attention to India than the current administration, or the one before that, or the one before that. For 20 years, we have been working really assiduously developing our relationship with India. And we need to, there's great benefit for the United States for us, and benefit for India. And we need to do that. And particularly, if you're concerned about China, you need to be concerned about India.
Right. And we need to be thinking more and interconnectedly about our alliances and how we work together with our allies. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you.
How's that? I gave you a whole menu there. So
yeah, you hit all the high points. Well, we've got more questions, and I'm going to open it up now for the members. You all, anyone who's on, if you use the Zoom function at the bottom, you can raise your hand and then I'll be able to see.
You have to go, you have to click on reactions first. And one of the reactions is raise your hand.
Yes, and then I'll be able to see and I'll call on you. And so I see Tom. And if you want to unmute yourself and you have your camera on, I see, and you can ask Charles directly.
Okay, great. Thanks. And thank you, Ambassador, for all your work over the years. I was wondering, as you move into retirement, what are your thoughts on the demographics of aging populations and how that will affect geopolitics in the coming decades?
Okay, I'm going to tell you a brief anecdote. So I was in Toronto last month, having lunch with Laura Dawson's cousin, who's a guy in his 60s, super nice guy, and I think just an average Canadian. And unprompted, he says to me, "Thank God for the immigrants we're having in Canada." He says, because we're not having enough children to replace ourselves. And it's these immigrants who are keeping the economy going, who are paying taxes so I can get my, on and on and on. And it is a way of thinking that I think it would be the rare American who would think that way. Angela Merkel letting in, what was 1 million refugees from Syria and Afghanistan turns out to be a brilliant thing for Germany. We need to change precisely because industrialized nations, all of us, it's not the US, we don't have enough children, and we have the percentage of retirees to the proportion of retirees to working workforce. I don't know what the right word is, bigger, smaller, anyhow, each worker has to support more retirees. How's that? And that's what we need to think about. And as a senior citizen, I mean, I just think about that. I mean, let's talk about some great power here. I mean, I'm tired of hearing about old white guys. It's not, old. I mean, give me a break. It's okay. It's okay to diss us, right? Stop it. Stop it. How's that?
Okay, thank you. I see Keith has a question. Keith is one of our steering committee members. Thank you, Keith, for all your work this year. And you can unmute yourself and ask Charles.
Well, basically, I'll repeat my question to you and Charles. So first of all, Charles, just to remind you how appropriate doing the last program is, you did the first program, and I just sent you, so our older minds, you can remember what the topic was. What was it?
I got no idea.
It was.
Tell me what it was. Whoops.
Keith, did we lose you?
Come back.
I think Keith is referring to the first program that was on Canada and Mexico that you did, Charles, right?
Damn.
Back in 2014.
How prescient, I didn't know I was that smart.
Keith, do we have you back? I can't hear you. Okay, well, Keith, we can come back to you, Keith. I'm going to turn to Jorge. Jorge, also a steering committee member. Thank you for all your work this year. Jorge, if you want to unmute, you can ask.
I think I'm doing that. Charles, what are your top 2 thoughts or recommendations for your successor? What are you leaving on your letter on that desk, the famous desk that Secretary of State leaves to the next Secretary of State?
Ooh. Well, actually, I've been working on just that memo, and I appreciate the question, Jorge. I mean, the issue is how. Let me back up a little bit. This World Affairs Council and World Affairs Councils across the country, I think, are hugely important. I mean, what we do. I mean, it's if you do participate in a Zoom put on by a university, it's quite different. Ours are aimed at ordinary citizens and taking, complicated issues and presenting them in a way that people who are not academics, people who are not, policy wonks in Washington or, can figure out what's going on. And so that's hugely important. And my successor is Ricky Bevington, for those of you, let me just remind you all, who is a reporter with Georgia Public Broadcasting. You may have met her, seen her. She's been the moderator of our last 4, if I'm not mistaken, International Women's Day programs. And she's just fabulous. And what she has, besides youth and enthusiasm and energy that I don't have, is she's got a intrinsic understanding of media and how to use the media. And I think that's the future. And that's, if she can do that, and world affairs councils around the country can do that. That's the future. How do you reach more people? So let me back up. We in our fiscal year is we just had our board meeting. And so we did the numbers, and we are reaching 4 times as many people as we did 2 years ago. Okay, now not in person. And we're on track this year, I think, to triple last year again.
Wow, that's huge. Those are huge numbers.
But it's because, and I apologize for waving my finger. My sister's on, and she knows my mom did that, and our mom did that, and I got it from her. It's because you have to understand that it's not who's watching the program live. It's who's watching the program live plus who's watching it on YouTube, right? And it's our YouTube view. Actually, our live viewership is declining gently, but our YouTube viewership is going up tremendously. And whether you reach somebody live or you reach them on YouTube, you still reach them, right? And that's the future. And how do you build on that?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Those are really impressive numbers, Charles. Congratulations. That's excellent. Kirk, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm not as eloquent perhaps as Louise or Nadia, but I did want to speak out and say thank you, Charles. We really appreciate working with the World Affairs Council. We see you as a key ally. And I mean, the United States is Canada's #1 partner. And just getting Canada on the radar in such a big country, it's nothing negative that Canada doesn't always reach the front page here, because we're just that secure, trusted partner. So we're not the sexy, that's where our work is here at the consulate. But we do find you particularly, Charles, and the World Affairs Council to be key partners in helping us emphasize the importance of our North America market, not just the United States market. It's $22 trillion market of 480 million consumers. And our economy is basically our one economy across North America. So we know you get it. And we really appreciate everything you have beyond the World Affairs Council. We also speak at your executive MBA class and talk to students, and we're here to do that. And you really have helped us, so we really appreciate it. And of course, you've got your personal connection to Canada. You're basically honorary Canadian. So we congratulate you and thank you for the 7 years as the president. And we hope that our partnership continues with you and with Ricky and the World Affairs Council.
Thanks, Kirk. I appreciate it. I've got to throw in an editorial comment, because I always do. And that is, Americans aren't aware of how much Canadian investment there is in the United States. And part of that is Canadian companies don't tell you they're Canadian, right? I mean, if you drive around Georgia and you go to one of these industrial parks, German companies fly the German flag. Belgian companies fly the Belgian flag. Brazilian companies fly the Brazilian flag. Canadian companies, no. Galladito, as we say in Spanish. Oh, they're just, they don't want to make any waves. And so we don't have an understanding, and that's obviously what you do all day long, Kirk. We don't have an understanding of how many jobs, whether it's in Georgia or Oregon or you name it, depend on Canada. And that Canada is Georgia. Let me say this, I'm going to say it very slowly. Canada is Georgia's largest export market. Georgia, not Vermont that borders Canada, where you would think, by the way, there's also Vermont's #1 export market. It's the number
And for
one
over 2 decades,
for
over 20 years.
38 states. Canada is our largest export market. And I'm going to say what you never do. We export 10 times as much to Canada with 35 million people as we do to China that has 1.4 billion people. That's why Canada is important to us. Is that your talking point, Kirk?
Well, I think we should be sending a check in the mail there, but basically it's even hard for us to determine how many jobs in Georgia depend on Canadian companies. We know there's in the neighborhood of 300 Canadian companies and 34,000 some odd workers, but I bet you it's even more because like you said, they don't fly the flag. A lot of dual nationals, they're both Canadian and American. So I think we're just so integrated and tied together. But it's been over 2 decades. We're trying to find out exactly how many years has it been since Canada has been Georgia's #1 market. It's over 2 decades. So we're not geographically as close, but it's a really important economic relationship. It's a really important security relationship. We have Canadian soldiers at U.S. bases right here in Georgia. I was just down at Fort Benning on Sunday for the holiday reception. We have 4 Canadians there. And it's a people-to-people ties, direct flights and everything. So I think it's the all-around everything. And that's it, secure and trusted partners. And we find partners like you to be ideal. And thank you for helping spread our message.
Cool, delighted.
Great, thank you for that. We appreciate it. Keith, can I go back to you? Are you back on?
Still can't hear you, Keith.
Still can't hear you, Keith.
Got a technical issue.
Okay, we'll move to Keith. Maybe you could write your question in the chat. And we'll move to Louis. You have a question. Louis, also a steering committee member. Thank you for all your work this year. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Amanda. And Charles, take this opportunity to say what a pleasure it's been to work with you. It really has been fun. Secondly, you have done an amazing job here. And it's been a pleasure to be part of that, but to watch all the work you've done, you and your staff, and it really has been pretty amazing what you've accomplished. And the third question is, and maybe it's because or the actual first question, is because I've been reading my emails, but what are your plans personally for the next year, and maybe, since you're a man of great planning, the next 5 years?
Oh, God. At my age, I'm not doing 5-year plans. Let me just say, it didn't work well for 5-year plans. Didn't work well for the Soviets. But what I plan to do, I hope, is travel, and not travel in the American way. For all you out there will appreciate. When we go on vacation, we think it's you're being a little bit lazy if you go longer than 2 weekends and the week in between, that you're goofing off. I mean, that's the American vacation is 10 days. And what I want to do is go to places and spend a month, spend 6 weeks. Anita and Abraham Ninan are on. We went to India and spent, I think, 20 days there, 3 weeks there. And it was like going to the US and seeing New York and Boston and saying you've seen the US. I mean, there's so much more to see. And if I've got to go across all those time zones and endure that miserable flight, I want to spend more, I want to amortize the pain over more time in country, right? So I want to use Airbnb and travel. And I'd love to spend time in Japan. I'd love to spend time in Korea. I'd love to, go to all those little villages in Italy that I've never been to that look so wonderful. I mean, that's what I want to do. And hopefully, 3 trips a year, 4 trips a year. I don't know how many I could afford now that I'm not working, but we'll see. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing.
Well,
and if anybody out here has got needs consulting, I'll be glad to consult. Get your checkbooks out.
Excellent. Do you have the 4 countries identified?
No, we're still arguing over that, because there's places she's been, there's places I've been, there's places we want to go back to, the places that we've never been to that we want to go, So it's a long list. And as Kirk said, I've been going to Canada a lot lately, and So and it's a big country with a lot to see.
Excellent. Safe travels.
Thanks.
Great, thank you for that. I see Cedric, you've got a question. Cedric, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Well, it's more than a question. It really, Charles, I can't tell you how gratifying it's been to me personally, and I know to Wayne Lord as well, to see you take the council to higher and higher levels. It's just been a phenomenal ride, and watching you do it has really been great because, you know, we gave birth to something and it's really matured and taken off. And that's, I think, very special for Atlanta. There is now no question that it has a long future in Atlanta as a council. It's not a tenuous situation by any means. And no one will ever accuse you of not having enthusiasm. That is the greatest thing too, overflowing with it. I wanted to ask you, though, about the membership of the council and the reach of the council, the diversity of our membership. How diverse has it become? Are we seeing, I guess you would say, viewership now rather than attendance, although I think attendance too is important, beyond the perimeter and amongst the many ethnic communities beyond the perimeter? I'm not sure that we're reaching as diverse an ethnic audience as we could be, particularly, and I came to our last program with the council and you see all the old friends and they're on this program today and it's wonderful to see them. So what can we do to diversify and reach out to wider audiences? Any thoughts on that?
There's an easy question, Cedric. Thank you very much. I mean, one of the great things about Zoom is you actually, when you finish the Zoom program, you can download who you know, the individual IP addresses, you know, and where they're from. And so, you know, which is different than the people who register, by the way. I mean, people will register and then something comes up at the office or at home and they don't actually watch the program, but you can actually, you know, all of you will be on the readout at the end of the Zoom program, which is really helpful. So when you do in-person programs, I mean, obviously the people who come are, you know, Atlanta's big, the traffic's miserable. You know, the people who come are people for whom it is convenient to drive, pay the parking, put up with the traffic, you know, all those sorts of things, right? And so we draw from, you know, Atlanta differs a little bit if the program's downtown or north of the city or, you know, at the Carter Center, or, you know, we've done things at the Georgian Club out in Cobb County. You know, you'll draw a different audience. But the wonder of doing virtual programs is, while the majority of the people are still from Metro Atlanta, we get people from across the US and, interestingly enough, from around the world. So we did a program on K-pop last week, which if you didn't watch it, go watch the YouTube. It actually was it was great, great fun. It was on K-pop, K-food, K-drama, do they equal K-power?
It was great, I agree.
And it was, you know, it was like so far beyond my comfort zone, right? That it was like, oh my God. And we had people on the call from Nigeria, right? We had people on the call from Japan. We had, you know, so it's like you get people from around the world, and depending who the speaker, I mean, and that means that our, I don't know what the right word is, our catchment area, the area we're drawing from, is way more diverse. But there's another kind of diversity that you didn't mention, and that is age diversity. And that's a huge challenge. I mean, it's, you know, if you go to World Affairs councils around the country, it's pretty easy to get people my age to go to programs. But it's harder. I see Marion Dixon on. It's harder to get people Marion and Maddie Cook's age to come to programs, and take Kim, and, you know, and how do you do that? And how do you make it interesting enough? Andrew, I'm looking at you now. How do you get young people to come to programs? And that's beyond the, you know, the different ethnic communities, immigrant communities in the metro area and in the US. One of the huge challenge for World Affairs Councils is how do you get young people there? And it's so much more fun when you do, because you get different questions, different perspectives, new ideas. And so we work hard at that, but we need to work harder at that. Another just sort of interesting factoid is membership, that is dues paying members, dropped off during COVID because you can't charge for a Zoom program. So why would I belong, right? I'm not getting any break. We did a in-person program this week and people renewed their membership to come to the in-person members only program. And so, I mean, it's that mix that you have to wrestle with. And then to go back to your other, I mean, sort of what's behind all of that is in many ways, the communities in Atlanta only interact maybe at work. So, there's, gigantic Indian and Korean and Taiwanese and Chinese and Jamaican and you name it, communities in Atlanta, Brazilian community in Cobb County. How do we get those people involved? How do we reach out to them? How do we put on programs that are of interest to them? How do we reach out to new industries? If you look at our board of directors, it's very much sort of a long time Atlanta industry, but it's not fintech and it's not the music industry and it's certainly not the movie industry that belong. And now, those of you who are not from Atlanta, we've got this gigantic EV plant that's going to open up east of Atlanta. I mean, it's going to change the world, change our world. How do we get those people involved?
I think it's geography. Perhaps we have to take the programs geographically out of downtown Atlanta sometimes. And that was a challenge that we fought with and really didn't come up with a good answer.
No, I mean, you and I mean, we've done it where, you put on the program in Cobb County and not enough people come, right?
Yeah.
You get people who live outside the perimeter who want the program north of the perimeter, Johns Creek.
Right.
And I've done, doing it is one thing, getting people to show up is another.
Right, definitely. We've got few more questions. We've got Dr. Ward Robinson. Jenny, you want to unmute yourself and ask Charles?
Hi, Charles. Thank you.
Hey, Jenny, how are you?
I am great. I want to say thank you. First personally and then professionally. When I first arrived in Atlanta, just over 3 years ago, it's been now, you were very welcoming and you were very action driven to ensure that as the leader of PAHO, I met the right people. You gave PAHO an opportunity to bring the LATAM voice into the World Affairs Council. And for that, I'll be forever grateful. And professionally, I want to thank you for your courage in tackling tough subjects. I've certainly had some of these conversations with you, and I appreciate that the World Affairs Council has not shied away from the critical topics that not only dealt with diversity, but dealt with justice, that dealt with the need to address equity and access. And I know these are principles that you hold dear, but with your leadership, they've also become intrinsic in the actions of the World Affairs Council. I will miss you. I know you're not going to sit on a rocking chair. And since you opened that door to consulting, don't be surprised if you get a call. Thank you. And best to you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I appreciate it. That's great. I'm taking a trip through all the people on the call. One of the things that has been really rewarding for me is, we've had people, I mean, it's like we, with our alumni, have populated businesses and consulates and organizations all across the Atlanta area with people who work for us, who started with us. And that's been so rewarding. I see Emily Reeve is on, who works at the French Consulate General. To have young people and work with them and then, see them go to work for the city of Atlanta, or the Georgia Department of Economic Development, or the Canadian Consulate General. I mean, you name it. I mean, they're just people who are, and that's just been wonderful to watch.
That's great. Yep, you've been a great boss for a lot of people, Charles,
They-
including me.
They left. I don't know how good a boss I am. They left. I'm teasing.
You've helped to give them their wings.
Yes,
Stephen, I see you've got a question.
Charles, first, congratulations on behalf of myself and Paige as well.
Thanks.
If you, as you do all these travels, if you need someone to carry your bag, keep me in mind.
Delighted to have you anytime.
My question goes back to Atlanta. As you know, I'm sort of a newcomer here, and I think a lot about, what does the city need to do to take it to the next level and become one of the leading global cities in the world. And you mentioned the provincialism, but I also wonder about sort of infrastructure and public space. I'm struck as a newcomer here just at how vibrant the neighborhoods are, how wonderful the cultural offerings are, how diverse the population is. But what seems to really be missing is a vibrant downtown. And I guess my question is, how essential is that to becoming a truly leading global city, in your view?
I don't know how to answer your question. I mean, I moved downtown, as you know, so I'm here, and those of y'all who don't live here, delighted to have you. Please come on down. I know from a living perspective, it's important, right? That if you go to Amsterdam, you go to Stockholm, you go to Paris, Bogota, you name it. I mean, Mexico City, oh my word, we're having a vibrant, alive downtown that doesn't close up at night is really key. But if you go to Sao Paulo, there's 6 downtowns. There's not one downtown. So I don't know. I know it's pleasant. I know it's fun. I love walking around and going to restaurants and stuff. But I don't know how key that is for the intellectual or business life of a city. I just don't have the data points. I mean, I would like to think it is, but I'm not sure that's the case. And you see that when I was in Caracas, nobody went downtown. I mean, even in better times, people didn't go downtown. They stayed in the neighborhood where it was comfortable, and part of it had to do with crime. Part of it had to do with traffic. In Caracas is a bad example of a successful city because it is exactly the opposite, right? I don't know. That's something for all of us to answer. I was in Toronto, a month ago, and which has got a vibrant downtown, but it's got suburbs that are so far out. It is unbelievable. And I think that's a natural byproduct of a city being successful. The property values are it's so expensive to live downtown that cities expand.
Right. We've got a couple more questions here and a few more minutes. So I'm going to go to Tony, and then we'll swing back to Keith, and hopefully his microphone will be back on. So Tony, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, great. Thank you. And Charles, I just wanted to thank you for your support and collaboration the last few years working with you, in my role in the Atlanta Global Studies Center and our work together. I've really enjoyed that. We've benefited from your perspective, your leadership as part of our advisory board. And we hope to really continue that, see you at things and stay in touch. And we're looking forward to picking up and working with Ricky, and our partnership has been really invaluable, and we've been honored to be able to do that. So I just wanted to say thank you and publicly say that your contribution and work to the success of the Atlanta Global Studies Center is really has been a critical piece of our work. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Tony. It's been fun working with y'all. I mean, and with a lot of other people on here too, and from academia. And we, the World Affairs Council, also appreciate Atlanta Global Studies Center sponsoring some of our program, not enough, we'd like more, but we really do appreciate that. And I want to say, I want to know where in the world you are, where it's sundown. You're not in Atlanta.
I am in my home office with this backdrop of downtown Atlanta that is always sundown.
Yeah, it looks fabulous. It looks great.
That's great. Okay, Keith.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
I think I actually had it here on another button. Anyway, I too have learned and I'm grateful to Charles, but I want to point a little forward and a little back. Forward, if talking about media, it's very interesting that as I looked up Ms. Bevington, she has a TED chat on why to read newspapers. So I recommend everybody take a look at that and not just falling in love with your favorite television show. I want to reach back and also thank Wayne and Cedric. And Cedric is actually the one that came up with a members forum idea. So gentlemen, all of you, thank you very much. And thanks for all I've learned from you, Charles.
Well, thanks, Keith. I want to thank you. And I mean, I have to go back and thank Wayne and Cedric again, because I inherited this organization when I took over here that was doing great stuff. And, you know, all I had to do was sort of, you know, continue it, throw in a few new ideas here and there. And it's been great fun. It's been great fun. And I want to thank all of you on this call. I've enjoyed my 7 years here. In the sort of notes that Amanda sent me, she had, you know, what have been your favorite program? My favorite program is always the next one, right? It's the next one and the last one. I mean, I get so excited about them. We've just done such great stuff. And think about it, over the past, since June, what's that, 6 months, we've done really tremendous programs on India with Ken Juster, who had just finished his term as a U.S. ambassador to India. We did a great program on Canada with Kristen Hillman, the Canadian ambassador to the United States. We did a program on Russia that was just extraordinary with Fiona Hill. Go back and watch it. I mean, she is just amazing. We did a great program on Germany with Constanze Stelzenmiller that went beyond the election and election results and what to look forward to. We did the program on China that I just mentioned with David Rennie. And we did our second most attended, most viewed, YouTube viewed program. The first one, by the way, was Fiona Hill. This second was with Tony Wayne and Annie Fortsheimer, both of whom had served in Afghanistan. And it was the week after withdrawal from Afghanistan and talking about Afghanistan and what was going on. And it was just fabulous. And those have been great. Then the cultural programs are so much fun. I mean, they really are. We had Luis Alfonso Dance Cuba. We had this Cuban dance troupe that came. I can't even remember how many years ago now. We filled up the Roxy Theater. And it was just extraordinary. We had Patty Hinich, who's got her TV show on Mexican cooking on NPR. I'm sorry, on not NPR, on PBS. Patty's Mexican Kitchen. And she took over a restaurant, and I mean, obviously she couldn't cook for that many people, but she directed the staff of the restaurant and produced this extraordinary meal. We had such great fun with it. And we did, just this program on K-pop and K-power just this last week. And when you do something that's out of the mold, that's just so different, you learn so much, including we had great German and Austrian wine Monday night at the Halle Foundation. It's like, I apologize, anybody on the call who's German. But my idea in my mind of German wine was, the cheap wine I drank when I was backpacking around Europe, and not, good German wine, which turns out are extraordinary. And I recommend them to you all. Anyhow, all that's been great fun, and I'm going to miss it. I'll be in the audience now, not the one with the microphone. And I'm looking forward to that as well. And I got to say one last thing asked me what am I going to do? They listed all these countries. The place we want to go first actually is Argentina. And we had planned to go in January and spend time in Buenos Aires, go to Montevideo for a long weekend, go up to the wine area around Mendoza. And our Argentine friends said, it's too hot, don't go in January. So we're postponing, and that may be our first trip in March. So anyhow, we'll see. We haven't bought tickets for anywhere yet. And I've been working on another trip to Cuba that will be in March or April with the World Affairs Council. And I hope all of y'all will, first of all, I hope it actually takes place. And if it does, I want all y'all to come. There's a great revelatory learning experience going to Cuba and seeing the good and the bad of Cuba.
I just posted that in the chat, Charles.
Yes,
Telling you
I just
not
saw
to
that.
forget our trip to Cuba. It was extraordinary.
Oh, it was just great. It was great. That was great fun. And I mean, a number of people on whose pictures I see have gone on those trips. And so it's been great.
Yes, highly recommended. The Cuba trip was definitely a highlight for me in the last 7 years with you, Charles. Enjoyed it. Well, we're so happy to have everybody on this call today. And thank you so much, Charles, again for everything. We've got one last thing. If those of you want to hang around, we've got a little bit of a tribute for you, Charles. Henna, are you
See her typing away
around? Here we go. Do we have sound?
Perhaps. Oh my gosh.
No sound. Yeah, we're missing sound.
Let's start this again. Hold on.
That worked.
Coming shortly.
Of course, we tested it before and it worked fine. Let's see.
No pressure.
Not at all. Do we have it now?
That's right. It's all about Charles. Charles, first of all, thank you so much for doing everything that you've done for the World Affairs Council. The organization was great when you came in. You've taken it to a much higher level. So we all thank you for everything. And the best part is that you've not just been Ambassador Shapiro, but you've been Charles to us. So we look forward to continuing the conversation with you and Laura going forward. Have fun, Charles.
Charles, have fun. Thank you so much for everything you've done with the World Affairs Council, the way it's grown. I mean, I think we've all been enriched by the leadership and the programs we've had. Wishing you the best as you go forward. We'll continue to stay in touch, hopefully. And thank you, thank you. We'll miss you.
Thank you.
Hey, Charles. Thank you so much for all you've done for the World Affairs Council of Atlanta. You've been such an inspiration to so many of us, and you have been a great leader to this organization. We're going to miss you so much. And I hope you know how much you've meant to all of us. And to me personally, I'm so delighted and honored to have worked with you for so many years and to call you not just a mentor, but a friend. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for everything.
Charles, thank you for providing a very stimulating path to global engagement through the World Affairs Council these last years. And also, we really enjoyed being part of your life and bringing us into it. Either we'll be celebrating birthday or having dinner at your house. But also something very personal and very important to us. And I have somebody here that would like to tell you about it right now.
Hola, Charles. The trip to Cuba, of course, you know, it was a highlight of our lives. Not only for us, but also for our children, who were so eager to hear all the stories we brought back from their family and the experiences. For that, and for many other things, muchas gracias, Charles. Take care, and please stay in touch. All the best.
Hey, Charles, time flies when we're having fun. Thanks for your energy, imagination, and intellect. There are several favorite programs I had, starting with the first one is you as guest, telling us that Mexico and Canada should not be overlooked as trading partners. We had a bishop speak to us about the Pope. Later, the bishop became a cardinal. We had a general from NATO, retired, telling us Trump wouldn't be able to change NATO. You know, we did topics, water, cybercrime. We had countries as Israel as an incubator startup nation. Truly, still, you took folks to Cuba. You're still the ambassador. Anyway, lastly, I'll miss your Yogi Berra quotes. It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. So we'll just wish you and Laura all the best for the future in your next endeavors. Thanks again. We'll miss you.
Hey, Ambassador. Thank you so much for all the work you've done for the council, not only on behalf of myself, but on behalf of all of the young leaders. We've all definitely enjoyed your presence and your mentorship along the way, especially those tea or sometimes beer in the garden sessions during the pandemic were really great. We wish you all the best on your next endeavor. Please keep in touch. We'll miss you.
Congratulations, Ambassador Shapiro, on the job. Well done. We're not going to say goodbye. We're just going to see you soon. But you have been such a boost to the council and been such a great leader and such a great mentor to all of the interns and employees that have come through the council, and to so many of us who have volunteered with the council as well. We're going to miss you as the consummate host, but I know that you will stay busy doing the new things that you want to do and old things that you love to do in your retirement. So it's not goodbye, it's see you soon in a different setting, but you're lucky to have had you as long as we did at the council. So well done, congratulations, and we'll see you soon, Ambassador Shapiro.
Well, thank you, Charles.
Oh, thank you.
We love doing this. Thank you so much.
thanks to all of you and to you and Ramesh, Advij, Mary, Jorge, and Sylvia. That's the treat, is that Sylvia was on. I think Keith and Addie and Cecily. I mean, I really appreciate this. This has been lovely, and I hope that Henna will send me the clip so that I've got that. But this has been great fun. I mean, you are the council, all of you who are the members. And by the way, if you need to renew your membership, don't forget to do that. This has been great. Thank you all so much. And I will be seeing you as a member of the audience of future World Affairs Council programs. So bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.